Hey everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I am currently recording episode 1 of my brand spanking new podcast, and today we're going to be talking about reactive dogs. Reactive dogs are a real passion of mine. I love them to pieces. I don't call them aggressive. I don't call them anything like that. To me, they are just grumpy, because let's face it, we've all been in that mood where we don't want to socialise, which during COVID, I think we can all really feel. So yeah, today we're going to cover a few subjects. I'm going to do kind of a basic introduction as to what a reactive dog is, the difference between reactivity and aggression. We are also going to cover what reactive dogs look like, whether there's any particular breeds that are more reactive than others. We are going to discuss why some dogs are reactive, and then I want to give you some quick tips as to how you can live your life with a reactive dog, or to start that process of training and moving forwards together. Then once all that's done, I'm going to do a whole bunch of questions and answers from my wonderful Instagram Live audience who are with me whilst I'm recording this. So if you are listening to this on the podcast, please do come and join us for some of the Instagram Lives to make sure that your questions get answered. Okay? Right, so let's get cracking. Let's start with what is a reactive dog. A reactive dog is a dog who has a lot of feelings about a certain thing. This thing can be a scary thing. It could be an exciting thing. But typically they come across in the same way. There likes to be a lot of barking and lunging. It's something that I call a war dance. And there is a reason for this, and I will get into that in just a minute. A reactive dog is they're just the dog who doesn't understand how to process a certain feeling or emotion in a way that is productive to society, shall we say. It's good, isn't it? It's really tough owning a reactive dog. I know, I really truly do know and sympathise with all of you here who are in the same boat. What is the difference between reactivity and aggression? I get asked this question so much. To me, the best way of explaining it is that the demonstration of their emotion is aggressive, whereas the dog themselves is usually suffering from reactivity. And I realise that's a really fine line, but it's basically just nomenclature. So a reactive dog will potentially show aggressive displays, but it's not necessarily that the dog is aggressive, because to me an aggressive dog, as opposed to a reactive dog, is doing it with no reason as such. I often describe a reactive dog as that kid in the playground who uses their fists before they use their words. And basically what we are trying to teach our reactive dog through training, through all the various things that we'll go through later, is to use their words. To go, I'm uncomfortable, without going shouty, lunge, be scary. It's a really difficult thing to communicate to a dog though, isn't it? So I hope that makes that clear as to what I believe the difference is between reactivity and true aggression. I'm actually not genuinely certain that any dog is truly aggressive, because there's always a reason. There's always a reason in it, and all we've got to do is take moves and steps to understand what that reason is, so that we can make that change, because that's the important part, right? We need to make sure that they are comfortable and happy in their environment, which is a big ask for some dogs. And yeah, so moving on, before I ramble into oblivion, what does reactivity look like? The most common displays, I should have mentioned, I do have Shelby in the room. If you do hear scratching, like you're hearing right now, or you do hear howling, barking, that is kind of to be expected. I am doing this live, and my dogs are a massive part of my life, surprisingly. So, what does reactivity look like? Reactivity is, as I've said, a demonstration of emotions. Typically, the most typical way you will see a reactive dog react is with barking and lunging. These are a very loud way to say go away to another dog, another person, to an object, to a thing they want to chase even. It's a way that they want to instigate their solutions. And it just, like I said, it becomes like this self-rewarding behavior. So your dog learns, if I bark and lunge at this other dog, or at this person, at this duck, I don't know, various different triggers. But if I perform these set of actions, the scary thing goes away. That departure of the scary thing is the reward. Okay. I talk a lot about self-rewarding cycles because they are a very interesting thing, and I always feel that if we can understand that cycle of reward, we can then understand how to break it and how to change that into a more desirable outcome. So in this instance, typically barking, lunging, they learn that makes the scary thing goes away, and suddenly their safety and happiness is restored. It's fairly simple, right? When you sort of break it down like that, and I'm hoping that this is all coming across really nice and easy. If you do ever have any questions, just either direct message me or come to the lives because they are fun. So, are there any breeds that are particularly more prone to reactivity than others? I hate to say, and I don't want to typecast in any way, shape or form, but yes, I find that dogs who are bred for alertness it's like alertness and anxiety, or fear, are kind of, it's like our ancestors who selectively bred these dogs honed in on that particular emotion and feeling of our dogs to achieve their goal. So it's like they've slightly tipped over from the confident side of awareness to anxiety. And if we can tip it back, that's how we start the training, right? So understanding, and then that. So that means that certain breeds, such as German Shepherds, Border Collies, Pit Bulls, a lot of bull breeds, in fact, can be more prone. Oh, and livestock guardians. So, like any livestock guardian, or what do they call them? So, like Neapolitan Mastiffs, they can all become very, very over-aware of their surroundings and over-aware of what's going on around them. And these are things that, to me, make obvious links towards reactivity. So whilst a well-bred variety of any of the breeds that I've mentioned will not show reactivity, those that are poorly bred or have been ill-considered breedings are going to possibly have a predisposition to this. There is a reason that we look at, if you Google reactive dog and go to an image search, you will get a certain category of dogs. This does not mean that these are the only dogs that get this, because this is a really, really big point. It doesn't matter whether you've got a Labrador, a Golden Retriever, a Chihuahua, a King Charles Cavalier, a Cavalier, any sort of dog can become reactive. It does not mean that you have failed them. It does not mean that they are broken. It does not mean that they are never going to recover. Reactivity is not a short-term thing, but it's definitely a thing we can overcome. These things are tough. They take a lot of dedication, they take a lot of time and a lot of understanding and a lot of treats, but typically, but they can be overcome. They are not essentially a life sentence. So please don't worry about that when it comes to your dog. And I touched upon it there, but when it comes to why certain dogs are reactive and some aren't, it can come down to a few things. One of which, and a very important one, is breeding. As I suggested a second ago, breeding, it all starts with your puppy's parents. If your puppy's parents are intelligent, or no, if their breeders are intelligent, the dog's parents don't necessarily need to be intelligent, but if their breeders are intelligent, they are selectively picking dogs who have sound temperament, who are able in all sorts of situations. They are not scared of fireworks, they are not prone to separation anxiety, they are not prone to reactivity. They are well-adjusted dogs who are going to make phenomenal genetic donors, essentially, because our puppies take on parts of their parents through both genetics and epigenetics. I'm not going to go into that today because it's a very, very large subject, but they can take aspects of learned behaviour through genetics. Please understand that. So, for example, Indy is a reactive dog. He is a dog who I am always working on, because to me a reactive dog is always a project. Always. Doesn't mean he's not reliable in 99.9% of situations, but every now and then something will regress. It will take a step back because I've taken my foot off the training and I've gone, okay, he's fixed now. And I don't think that's ever going to necessarily be a number that's 100%, because after all, he is a dog. He still needs that reassurance, and sometimes I'll miss a signal because I'm human, and these things happen. But my point is his mum, when I went to pick him up as a puppy, I was not allowed to meet his mum. His mum was in a kennel in the yard, blocked away from the puppies and blocked away from the people coming to see the puppies, and I was told that she doesn't necessarily like people coming to take her puppies away. Me, as a new puppy parent, totally bought that. Totally didn't realise that it was a really big red flag. In hindsight, I know and understand these things, and that's why I'm trying to give you this information. So she basically, from what I can glean looking back with hindsight of 20/20 vision, she was a reactive dog. So it meant that he was scuppered from the start, and that's a really blunt way of putting it, but Indy was a really well socialised puppy, really well socialised, so much so that I got compliments from strangers on how well a German Shepherd puppy was socialised. That changed when he hit the second fear phase, and that's, as I look back, I don't think I made any significantly wrong things in Indy's life. However, it still happened. So the big part is genetics. The next part is how they are raised by the breeder, because that first 8 weeks, they actually gain something like 50% of their brain's entire volume for when they're being an adult, and that is something that gets filled very, very quickly, and if you've got a good breeder, they will ensure that it's filled with all the right stuff, okay, so that they will ensure that they meet a cat. Indy's not in the room, so I can say the word. They will ensure that they get exposed to loud noises. They will ensure that they get exposed to all sorts of things that just make life with that dog less stressful. And that, in turn, then comes to the fact that that dog is well adjusted for society, because we then have something called trigger stacking. I know, all these pieces of terminology, they do come more naturally the more you learn about them. So I'm hoping that I'm not overwhelming you guys right now. Please do comment and tell me if I am, and I will take a step back in the future. Essentially, the more stresses in a dog's life, the higher they climb up a ladder. I used to describe it as like a boiling pot. So you add in a degree, you add in another degree, you add in 5 degrees because they've met a Jack Russell on a walk who wants to take a piece out of their leg. You expose them to a new thing too quick, too hard, and then they go up another notch, and eventually you've gone from a simmer to a boil. That can also exhibit or affect reactivity. So we must be gentle with things like socialization and adjusting our dogs to our worlds, because the world of humans is not the world of dogs, right? That's not something that is going to ever come that, well, not ever, but it's not something that comes naturally to them from the get-go. Okay, so there is that too. Then we have medical. Yes. So a dog who is constantly in pain, whether that's a subtle niggling pain of something like gastrointestinal discomfort, so tummy problems, they're going to be grouchy. They can't communicate to you and go, Mum, Dad, really sorry, but today I just feel like poop and I don't want to go walking. Please don't make me go talk to the next door's Labrador, because, do you know, I just can't do it. And if they could, the world would be a much easier place, right? If we could just get that information from our dogs, all of a sudden everything would be so much easier. But we can't. So we have to try and interpret these things. And to anybody that gets I'll come to this later, but I will say it here too. To anybody who gets a suddenly reactive dog, go get them checked by a vet. Categorically, okay? You want to make sure that they are checked out. Make sure that they are happy and healthy inside before you start training. Because whilst training is always going to help, it also may not be as big a problem as you think it is. And you might have an easier time with training, okay? So if it's ever sudden, go get a vet check, because it's always worth it. Yeah, so I think that actually covers why some dogs are reactive. So we've done genetics, socialization, trigger stacking, and medical. Sounds about right. I do have it written down, but I'm just making sure mentally that in my little checklist. So, some quick tips for you as a reactive dog owner. If you have gone through this and decided, do you know what, I actually do think my dog is reactive to other dogs. I do think they are reactive on lead. And these can be very, very specific scenarios. Your dog may exhibit no reactivity when they're off lead. But on a leash where they are suddenly more contained, that can be more intimidating to a dog. And you may see it there. It can be totally situational. Okay? But generally speaking, there's a few ways that we can help the process along with a reactive dog. One of which is to learn your dog's triggers. Your dog's triggers will be certain things like another dog, being on lead, or whatever it may be. It may be a person in a high-vis jacket. Do you know how many dogs I've known that have problems with high-visibility jackets? It's unbelievable, I promise you. So if you can learn those triggers, you can learn the things that push them over the edge and make them uncomfortable, you can suddenly start predicting when things are going to happen. That amount of predictability allows you a window to train. So that's your first tip. Learn their triggers. Pick the next one, and I mean this comes from personal experience, because when, excuse me, I have a really itchy nose. When Indy first developed his reactivity, we were going to one of the most populated it wasn't a dog park on American terms, but it was a very dog dense country park that a lot of people walked their dogs within because it was quite accessible. That was a problem, because it meant that Indy would go into this situation and instantly become overwhelmed. And the further and further we tried to go with it, the more and more difficult it became. And that sounds really obvious, but when I took him out of that situation and put him on a really remote little bridle way that nobody used, all of a sudden I was opening up opportunities to train, opportunities to understand, opportunities to observe. Because the observation, that window to train, that ability to engage with your dog is critical, right? It's one of those things that we cannot, I cannot overstate, okay? Because the more immersed they are in their problems, the more difficult it becomes to resolve those problems, okay? Next, this one's a little bit controversial. For some people, less so for others, but muzzles, okay? Muzzles can give you, as an owner, huge, huge confidence, okay? Because if you are training a reactive dog, if you're anything like me, your biggest fear is them injuring another dog, okay, or person, or whatever it is that is their trigger. You don't want that to happen to the point that it becomes a problem, because a dog with a bite history is not something you want, right? Because you know that that's going to become a problem at some point in their life, and especially if they start getting a rap for it. You know, if they start getting a rap sheet on that, that's when you start getting severe issues, right, with legal sides of things and with veterinary bills and hospital bills or whatever it is. And that's the thing that we all want to avoid. So to me, that muzzle just means you have backup. It means that if something goes wrong beyond your control, you know it's not going to affect them long term, okay? And it just means that you can walk them with that little bit more confidence, okay? And that confidence is really important for you, because there is a huge emotional baggage side of things with a reactive dog, okay? And anybody who's in that situation is really going to know exactly what I'm talking about with this. Next one, please do get them a veterinary check. I mentioned this earlier, but our dogs are quite masterful at not necessarily showing that they are having or experiencing problems. That in itself means that we can struggle to see, understand, and adapt for them. Okay, so like I said, if they're having a bad day where they don't feel well, that day is going to be a problem day for them whilst they're out walking. That in itself means that you're going to have a tougher job training, understanding, and doing all the stuff that you want to do. So get them a vet check, just make sure that they're healthy, happy, and that their insides are doing what their insides are meant to do. Sounds silly, doesn't it? But it's very, very true. The last one, and this is a really, really big one. Don't be afraid to get help, okay? If something is feeling beyond you, reach out to a trainer, to a behaviourist, to somebody who can actually help you, and please make sure that they are force-free or fear-free, or they work in the positive reinforcement section only, because punishing a scared dog is never, ever going to work. Punishing a scared dog is like punishing me for being an arachnophobe. If you or even like the immersion theory, where in the case of my being arachnophobic, you'd place me in a room with a buttload of spiders and I would sit there dying on the inside, but on the instance I showed my fear, I would be punished for it. It's not gonna create anything productive, is it? So we use confidence building techniques, not forcing them to just adhere to life, okay? Because it's like saying you're scared of the outside world, just go live in it. No, show me how. Show me how to live in that world. Show me how to be confident in that environment, and I will be able to do it. Right, now, this is the part where we get to your questions. So I'm really hoping that somebody is going to give me a question about their reactive dog and the situation that they are in, so that I can try and help you through it. And whilst I wait for that, come on people, lots of conversation. You guys are never afraid to talk to me, and I'm not scary, I promise. So I'm hoping that made sense. I'm hoping that we kind of understand that we have to understand our dog's fear before we can step forward with them. We have to understand why they are reactive. We have to understand the environment that we are putting them in can make them worse. We have to understand that some dogs do have a predisposition to this, and breeding can be a problem. Indy's asking to come in, so if you can hear little woofs in the background, that would be Indy. Yeah, essentially, the more we can take a step back and look at things, the easier this does become. So Christy's just asked about any muzzles that I can recommend. So the one that I showed you there is a Ray Allen wire basket muzzle, which is a really easily available muzzle here in the US. It is one that I'm currently testing and has actually replaced Indy's standard muzzle that I will use from time to time, depending on where we're going, which is, or was, a Baskerville muzzle, which is sat somewhere beside me. Both of these muzzles, so you can see that essentially we've got a window for treats, which is wonderful, and you can squeeze them through this one too, because they're nice sized gaps, but they are both very strong. This one is, they're actually very similarly priced, so it's something that you can, this one's on Amazon, it's on Chewy, it's on, I'm sure, various UK pet sites, which I can't remember suddenly. Good God, I've not been gone that long. But you'll see that I've had to actually modify Indy's with the Baskerville, and it's essentially it was rubbing his nose, which isn't necessarily all that nice, but that's the benefit of this one. They have already thought of everything, and I really, really am in love with this muzzle, I have to say. So if you are in the US, fantastic choice. If you're not, I mean, a lot of places do wire basket muzzles, but I've not yet tested anything in the UK because my muzzle when I was in the UK was the Baskerville one. And then Kat has said that she has a German Shepherd who's 4 years old who can be reactive to dogs when she's on lead. Situational. She's not like it with all dogs though. It's quite confusing for me. I do try and do the same thing each time we see another dog, aka put her on a lead, sit her and focus on me. Most of the time she is fine, but sometimes she seems to not like the dog and barks and lunges. Okay, so the barking and lunging is your demonstration of fear. There's a shock. Give me any more tips for how I can manage her in situations. So Kat, essentially, I describe it as a bubble. Our dogs have, especially reactive dogs, it's like they have a large and extended personal space bubble. And it's something that I'm sure through COVID we've all kind of understood just a little bit, that suddenly our personal space bubble was expanded. That's your reactive dog. So if something comes into that bubble, and that bubble can be huge, just so you know, that bubble could be 30 foot, 40 foot, 50 foot. It could be the length of a football field. UK or US, whatever you want to choose on that one. It could be that far. And I will always say to work at their comfortable distance first, because that distance is essentially, that's where they can learn. Once they are too close, they can't learn. Once that dog is within that personal space bubble, they can't, that's no longer an environment where they are going to be able to sit and focus on you. That is not an environment where they are going to come out of it with anything positive. So first, if I were you, Kat, I would find the outside of that bubble and see where she is comfortable. And that's at worst case scenario. Because I understand when it's different dogs, and a lot of the time with the different dogs it can be something as simple as the fact that a terrier will stand quite forward. They're quite chest proud, so they will stand very forward, which can be quite, or deemed quite, an aggressive stance by another dog. It could be the simple fact that they've got a dark face, which means that your girl cannot read them as well. It might be the fact that they are intact males, which Indy has a massive problem with. It might even be the fact that, you know, like Indy used to have a massive thing against Labradors. It was just that they exuded this energy and this bounciness that he couldn't deal with. To him, that outlet of energy and that exuberance that a Labrador will almost naturally give off was a threat to him. He just took it as a threat. So yeah, it's, if she does start reacting, create more space is kind of the big takeaway there, Kat. I hope that helps. Yeah, absolutely fine if another dog does. She reacts, it's so confusing. I understand. Truthfully, I definitely understand where you're coming from on that, because breaking it down is really, really tough. So you've essentially just got to sit there and go, I would write it down. I think writing it down for you is going to be the biggest, most important aspect of this. Because if you can write it down and say, well, today she reacted to an Akita, they were dark-faced, they were chest-proud, they had a curly tail. I mean, it can be stuff as simple as that, because things like a docked tail or a natural bobtail, so you know, where they don't actually have a tail, can impede a dog's ability to communicate. So for her, who's slightly nervous or has a disposition towards anxiety, that can become a, I don't know how to read what you're putting off because you don't have a tail. And that in itself can mean that your dog goes, do you know what? I'm going to tell you to leave me alone, and I'm going to tell you really, really loudly. So try to make a list, essentially. And if you do get stuck on that list when you've got about 5-6 dogs on there, give me a shout. Send me your list, and I'll see if there's anything that we can pass out between us. I hope, good. I'm glad that helps, Kat. It's not always necessarily obvious, and sometimes we need to kind of take a step back because we're too close to it, if you know what I mean. And you can't see the wood for the trees. So, if anybody else has any questions, I would be more than delighted to help you now. So yeah, I'm hoping that you guys have enjoyed this. I'm hoping that you've got some nice takeaways from it, that you can sort of go, I'm hoping that you understand your reactive dog just a little bit better than you did half an hour ago. Because I've been there. I've been in your shoes, and I know how confusing and how confusing and stressful it can be for you as an owner. I understand the emotional drain. I understand the exhaustion. And another thing, real quick, if you do ever get to that scenario, you are welcome to take breaks. Okay, breaks are good for you and your dog. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are feeling like you're struggling, do take a break. And I do also want to mention to those of you who have stuck around, no problem, Christy, glad that it could help. I'm glad you found it interesting too, Kat. That's great. And I do want to quickly mention that I am launching a reactive dog course. It's going to be a very, very limited course. That course is going to be for 8 to 10 people maximum, because the idea is it's not just this is how you train your reactive dog. It's this is how you understand your reactive dog, and you have other people that understand you, because I know how isolating it can be when you have a dog who is reactive and you try and speak to your family about it and nobody understands that, you know, you can't just force them to behave in this situation. They are just going to do what they do until you find a way of communicating with them that they are safe and comfortable in this environment. That is going to be the Rebarkable Reactives course, and I'm really, really freaking excited to be starting to do it, because I'm hoping you can tell, but it's something that's really close to my heart, and I really want to provide you guys with the knowledge and experience that I've gained through this and through teaching other reactive dogs too, because the dogs that I've helped in person. Sorry, Indy's distracting me outside by whining at me again. He says hi. I know how tough it is, and I've been there, and I became a trainer because of that. And I want you guys to not have to become trainers, to not feel like you're alone, and to have a way of engaging with your dog in an emotionally intelligent manner, okay? Because we can preach until kingdom come. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Karen. Just emerging from a reactive phase with my little Lakeland Terrier. Lots of work, hard work for months. So worth it. It's massively, massively worth it to come through it, because you will understand your dog to a whole different level once you've worked through something like reactivity. Because I'm not gonna lie, if I didn't work through reactivity with Indy, I wouldn't be a dog trainer, and it definitely wouldn't have led me down the path that I'm down now. And I'm delighted that my dog was reactive, and that's a very strange thing to say to anybody that's seen him when he was at his worst. But I'm massively excited to be launching this course, and I really, really hope that if you are interested in it, there is a link in my bio for it. You can also DM me. I'm happy to talk you through it. It is going to be super, super intense. I'm not going to lie to you, because when I listed out everything that I felt that you guys needed to know, it got quite scary. Sorry, talking a lot. It makes me thirsty, apparently. Yeah, so there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to go through. And as a result, I mean, it's an 8-week course, but I think we're covering something close to 40 topics. So I will try and keep them in short little burst lessons. I'm not going to try and make them hour-long lectures, because nobody needs that in their life. Excuse me, I told you. Yes, so that's the Rebarkable Reactives course, and I'm really hoping that you enjoyed today. I will be doing another live next week, which will also be on reactivity. I will confirm exactly what that's going to be in the next couple of days, so watch out on my social feed, and I will share it into various other places too. And thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, I hope to see you around, and always, always, always get in touch, okay? Because I love chatting with you guys, and I love knowing your experiences. There's also something in my stories that you guys should go and do, because we are all proud reactive dog parents, right? Go share your pictures under the add yours, and let's show the world that we're proud of our reactive dogs. They might be difficult, but they're ours, okay? Thank you very much for joining, guys. I'm really sorry that you've joined right in the last minute there, Cubits. And I will see you next week.